Russia has started attacking Ukraine. The situation is confusing. Attacks are being reported from several areas. And Russian President Vladimir Putin previously announced the military actions in a televised address. That will, of course, also be part of today's report. However, the focus of the Russian attack reports is on my global channel, so if you're interested in more details, please check there as well. The Russian attack on Kiev, Mariupol, and other cities drives tens of thousands of Ukrainians to flee. Is Europe prepared for this development, and how is the German federal government positioning itself? It is depressing images that are spreading on social networks these hours. The Russian attack on Kiev, Mariupol, and other cities in Ukraine is apparently driving thousands of people to flee their homes. They are looking for security and safety. Numerous pictures and video recordings show a massive flight from the Ukrainian capital Kiev to the west. The streets are full. In some cases, long traffic jams prevent the fugitives from making any headway. Others try to flee the metropolis by train. Long queues formed in front of ATMs on Thursday. It's not yet clear whether they will seek refuge inland or attempt to leave their country. Days ago, the United States warned of a renewed refugee crisis in Europe in the event of an attack ordered by Russian President Vladimir Putin. One of the biggest the world is facing today, with up to 5 million or other displaced people, said US Ambassador to the UN Linda Thomas-Greenfield in front of the UN General Assembly in New York. A massive refugee movement to the neighboring countries of Ukraine can be assumed. It is a development that Europe has already prepared for. According to EU Interior Commissioner Ylva Johansson, Poland, which shares a 500-kilometer border with Ukraine, could become the most important refugee destination for Ukrainians. In addition, however, people seeking protection in Italy, Germany, and France can also be expected, she explained already on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. It would be relatively easy for refugees from Ukraine to seek temporary protection in Europe, because there is no visa requirement between the EU and Ukraine. Ukrainian citizens can enter countries of the European Union without a special permit and stay there for up to 3 months. In the event of war, however, the authorities may issue longer-term residence permits in consultation with Brussels. And Germany? In the event of a further escalation of the war in Ukraine, Interior Minister Pfizer is considering taking in refugees in Germany without bureaucracy, according to information from the German magazine Spiegel. People displaced from Ukraine could be granted a temporary protection stay, according to participants in a conference called by Pfizer with the state interior ministers on Thursday. They would then not have to go through an asylum procedure. The corresponding paragraph 24 was included in the Residence Act as a consequence of the Balkan Wars of the 1990s. Before that, however, the European Council would have to formally determine a mass influx of displaced persons into the EU. Ukrainians can already enter Germany without a visa. So far, preparations are being made primarily to provide humanitarian aid to the countries surrounding Ukraine. We are following very carefully whether there will be refugee movements in our neighboring countries. We will provide massive support to the affected countries, especially our neighboring country Poland, should there be a large refugee movement. I'm in particular with the Polish government and the EU Commission on this in close exchange, said Federal Interior Minister Nancy Faeser on the request of T-Online. The Social Democrat faction deputy Dirk Wiese also told them, in view of the dramatic development, we have to be prepared to grant refugee citizens of Ukraine protection in close coordination with the European partners. Berlin is the first federal state to prepare specifically for the reception of Ukrainian refugees. This emerges from internal plans that are available to T-Online. According to the two migrant experts, Frank Dövel from the University of Osnabrück and Irina Lapshina from the Ukrainian Catholic University of Lviv, it's difficult to make an exact forecast of the number of refugees. No conclusions can be drawn from the Russian invasion of Crimea in 2014 and the resulting forced migration as to how many Ukrainians might seek protection in the EU. In 2014-2015, only 35,500 people applied for asylum in the EU, but at the time there were enough domestic alternatives to flee, the two scientists write. This is different with the large-scale attack on Ukraine that is now taking place. According to US estimates, up to 5 million Ukrainian refugees can be expected. Could Germany counteract a Russian aggression militarily at all? The inspector of the army, Alfons Mais, dares a gloomy prognosis. The possibilities of the Bundeswehr are extremely limited. Against the background of the Russian attack on Ukraine, Army Inspector Alfons Mais has criticized the years of neglect in the Bundeswehr's operational readiness with unusual severity. In my 41st year of service in peacetime, I would not have believed that I would have to experience another war. And the Bundeswehr, the army that I am allowed to lead, is more or less blank, wrote the Lieutenant General on Thursday in the LinkedIn network. The policy options we can offer in support of the alliance are extremely limited, he said. And Germany's top army soldier continued, "We all saw it coming and were unable to get our arguments through, to draw the conclusions from the annexation of Crimea and implement them. That doesn't feel good. I'm pissed." NATO territory is not yet under direct threat, even if the partners in the East feel the constantly growing pressure. Mais says, "If not now, when is the time to leave the Afghanistan mission behind us structurally and materially and to reposition ourselves? Otherwise, we will not be able to implement our constitutional mandate and our alliance obligations with any prospect of success." The Brandenburg Gate lit up in the Ukrainian national colors already on Wednesday evening before the attack. Berlin is thus sending a signal of solidarity with Ukraine, as the Senate Chancellery announced in advance. With the lighting of the Brandenburg Gate, we are sending a clear signal, together with other European cities. As a free city for a free and sovereign Ukraine, said Berlin's governing mayor, Franziska Giffey. The state chancellery in Düsseldorf, in North Rhine-Westphalia, where I'm living, was also illuminated in the colors of the Ukrainian national flag, yellow and blue, in the evening. In Berlin's partner city Paris, the town hall has illuminated in the evening. According to the Berlin Senate Chancellery, London wanted to join in with a similar campaign. Russian President Vladimir Putin recognized the independence of the separatist regions of Donetsk and Luhansk in eastern Ukraine on Monday and ordered the deployment of Russian soldiers. The Kremlin chief is planning an invasion of Ukraine for the second time since 2014, and he has now put the plan into action. And to demonstrate against this and show our standing with the Ukrainians, after filming this, I will go to our town hall because all democratic political parties will join together to demonstrate. The controversial Foundation for Climate and Environment Protection, MV, no longer wants to support the gas pipeline and its main sponsor, Nordstream 2 AG. The Climate Foundation, founded in 2021 by Nordstream 2 AG and the state of Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania, no longer wants to support Nord Stream 2 in the future. After the federal government stopped certifying the pipeline, the board decided that no further efforts would be made by the foundation to help with the work that was still to be done, and that information came before the attack. The chairman and former Prime Minister of Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania, Erwin Sellering, said on Wednesday and informed the German press agency. The board of directors agreed that we now have to take this development into account and that we as a foundation are no longer bound by the mandate that the state parliament gave us at the time and expressly stipulated in the statutes that despite the sanctions of the USA, they want to contribute to the completion of the pipeline, says Sellering. Well, it's all over now. Nord Stream 2 AG has provided the Climate Foundation with a total of 20 million euros, which the board of directors alone decides how to use. The foundation will continue to perform its core task of anchoring climate protection as an issue of vital importance to society. The foundation was established following a parliamentary resolution in January 2021. The state of Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania gave only 200,000 euros in endowment capital, while the Nordstream company gave 20 million euros. A main goal of the foundation was to support the completion of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline through the Baltic Sea under the threat of sanctions by the USA against companies involved. For this reason, the creation of the foundation was harshly criticized by environmental groups. The German Environmental Aid described it as a fake foundation and sued against its establishment. Just re-elected federal president Frank-Walter Steinmeier has called on Europe and Africa to work more closely together. Despite all the differences that exist, we have to find the way to a closer, fruitful partnership, he said in Dakar after talks with Senegal's president Macky Sall. Senegal plays a really key role as a solid democracy and anchor of stability in the entire region. With his visit, he wants to give a new impetus to the long-standing close partnership between Germany and Senegal. Steinmeier was greeted with military honors by Sall at the start of his 3-day visit. This is only the second time that a federal president has paid an official visit to the West African country. Heinrich Lübke was there exactly 60 years ago. The visit now is also interesting because the country is currently chairing the African Union, which includes all the states on the continent. For Steinmeier, it is the first long journey since the beginning of the corona pandemic. In the past 2 years, with the exception of a state visit to Israel in the summer of last year, he has only been to Europe. His last trip before the outbreak of the pandemic also took him to Africa in February 2020. At that time, he visited Kenya and Sudan. In Dakar, Steinmeier pointed out that the security situation in the Sahel region had become more difficult after the military coup in Mali. The security risks in neighboring countries have increased in recent months, he says. He assured his host that the debate in Germany about continued participation in international military missions in Mali was being conducted in a very responsible manner. Sall made it clear that he would like the Bundeswehr to continue to be present in Mali. Steinmeier welcomed the planned establishment of vaccine production in Senegal with the help of the German company BioNTech. This makes it realistic for the first time that vaccines are produced in Africa for Africa. So far, almost 100% of these have come from outside. Senegal's President Sall emphasized that the aim was not simply to receive vaccine gifts, but to produce vaccines themselves. Steinmeier wanted to take a look this week at where BioNTech would like to set up a plan for vaccine production in the near future. The German company, which developed and produces the first vaccine approved in the EU, presented a 2-module plant that will be built in Senegal, Rwanda, and possibly South Africa in the future. In Africa, only around 12% of the population is vaccinated, while in the EU it's more than 70%. The temporary release of vaccine patents is controversial between the African Union and the European Union. Africa demands this, but Europe, including Germany, refuses. According to experts, the patent release could boost vaccine production in Africa, but it's not a guarantee. The Federal Constitutional Court in Karlsruhe has confirmed that family courts are not responsible for lifting corona measures in schools. According to information, the highest German court did not accept a constitutional complaint from a mother for a decision. The woman had resisted the fact that her son's elementary school they had to wear masks and tests were there, and therefore requested proceedings before family courts in Brandenburg for endangering the welfare of the child. However, the courts rejected this. According to the highest German court, the constitutional complaint is inadmissible. A violation of fundamental rights or rights equivalent to fundamental rights of the mother is not evident. In addition, she failed to submit the required documents and missed deadlines. In addition, the Federal Court of Justice, the BGH, has already sufficiently clarified that family courts are not allowed to override corona measures in schools. This is reserved for administrative courts. Last October, the Federal Court of Justice ruled that family judges should not, in principle, issue any orders to enforce the best interests of the child towards school authorities. Judicial control in this area is the sole responsibility of the administrative courts. The police now intervene in many places when participants in corona protests wear the so-called Jewish star with the inscription unvaccinated. This was the result of a survey by the media service Integration in the Federal States, the results of which were published in Berlin. In addition, when this symbol is shown in almost all federal states, there is at least an initial suspicion of downplaying the Holocaust, the media service found during its research. In Baden-Württemberg, there are already 4 penal orders from district courts for publicly wearing the unvaccinated star and to spread the expression "vaccination sets you free." The National Socialists once affixed the cynical letters "work sets you free" to the gates of several concentration camps. According to the information, more than a dozen investigations are already underway nationwide because opponents of the corona measures have used symbols on the internet or at rallies that come from the time of the persecution of Jews by the National Socialists and the massive murder of Jews. 5 procedures are currently pending in Brandenburg alone and 3 in Hamburg. According to the information, 3 investigations into unvaccinated stars were initiated in Saxony between June and December 2021. Court judgments have already been issued in some cases. The Jewish star for Jews became mandatory in September 1941. It had to be worn on the left breast of the garment and was used to control restrictions and the freedom of movement of Jews. At the airports in Munich, Frankfurt and Berlin, climate activists from the so-called Last Generation Initiative protested against food waste and for a more consistent climate policy. The Green members of the Bundestag and former Minister for the Environment Jürgen Trittin expressed understanding for the demonstrators and also for their freeway blockades in recent weeks. Some claim to practice civil disobedience that doesn't make them violent, he told the German newspaper Die Zeit. Federal Minister of Justice Marco Buschmann from the Liberals jumps with his criticism too short, Trittin says. We need movements that bring such general human interests to the streets and articulate them, Buschmann had criticized the activists on Twitter. Unannounced demos on highways are and will remain illegal. Protest is okay, but only within the framework of the law and the Constitution, he wrote on Twitter. Yes, and Buschmann is absolutely right. If you do something else, you're a criminal. Easy. The deputy leader of the Union parliamentary group, Andreas Lindholz, accused Trittin of having a completely wrong understanding of politics. Such self-portrayal actions at the expense of uninvolved citizens only cause anger and incomprehension instead of promoting climate protection positively, she told the German press agency. In Munich, in the Bavarian state capital, 8 activists stuck themselves on the street and blocked access roads to the freight area in 2 places, as a reporter from the German press agency observed. However, the traffic obstructions were limited. According to the police, both blockades were relatively easy to drive around. They were resolved with the help of ambulance and fire services by around 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday. The activists were taken to the station. Investigations are being instituted against them for coercion. And in Frankfurt, in the Hessian city, 6 activists blocked an access road to the cargo area of the airport. They held up banners that read, "Save food, save lives." According to the activists, another protest action was prevented by the police. A police spokesman said there were other actions around Frankfurt Airport, for example on the feeder roads and intersections. This causes traffic delays, he said. And in Berlin, a roadblock by some climate protection demonstrators at the airport in the capital had no major impact. 4 men and women stuck themselves on an access road early in the morning, a police spokesman said. The blockade ultimately failed because the traffic was diverted by the police. The demonstrators were relieved from the street in the morning. The pharmaceutical company Pfizer started delivering the COVID-19 drug Paxlovid in Germany on Wednesday. From the distribution center in Karlsruhe, the tablets went to pharmaceutical wholesalers, as a spokeswoman said. Pharmacies can order the medicine if they have a doctor's prescription and give it to patients. The pill is considered to be very effective, especially for people with previous illnesses. They are said to reduce the risk of very serious illnesses by corona by 89%. The fact that the active ingredient nirmatrelvir in the drug inhibits a SARS-CoV-2 protein is intended to stop the multiplication of the coronavirus in the body. According to Pfizer, the worldwide production and packaging of the drug takes place in Freiburg. According to the spokeswoman, 1 million packs are planned for Germany this year, of which around 35% are to be delivered in the first half of the year. The contents of one pack are enough for one patient. Doctors can prescribe the drug and thus protect particularly high-risk patients from severe COVID-19 courses, for example, people of old age with chronic diseases or cancer, said the medical director at Pfizer in Germany, Daniel Kalanovic, according to the company. Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania's Prime Minister Manuela Schwesig failed at the first attempt to have the Hamburg CDU chairman Christoph Ploß ban a statement about her alleged attitude to the Baltic Sea gas pipeline Nordstream 2 and to Russia by means of an injunction. She's from the Social Democrats, by the way. In an urgent procedure, the Hamburg Regional Court rejected an application on Tuesday. Government spokesman Andreas Timm confirmed in the evening that such a decision had been made. The reasoning of the court will be examined and then it will be decided whether to appeal against it. The way before the higher regional court is open to Schwesig. The legal magazine Legal Tribune Online had previously reported on the rejection of the application. Meanwhile, Ploß welcomed the rejection of the application. The court decision makes it clear that debates in a democracy should be conducted with arguments instead of lawyers, said Ploß. And he said, the court's decision could not be clearer. My criticism of Manuela Schwesig's scandalous position on the Russian policy of aggression was absolutely justified. Schwesig's defeat is a victory for freedom of expression. Schwesig saw her rights violated by a verbal attack by the CDU politician on the public television talk show Markus Lanz in early February. With regard to the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, Ploß claimed that Schwesig said about Russian aggression against Ukraine, "These violations of international law don't interest me. The main thing is that the pipeline goes into operation." Schwesig denied having made such a statement and had taken legal action against Ploß. In a warning, he was asked by Schwesig lawyers to refrain from making the statement. Because Ploß did not want to comply, the dispute went to court. As Legal Tribune Online reported, citing a spokesman for the court, the judges did not see Ploß's statement in its context as a reproduction of a quote from Schwesig, but as an exaggerated expression of political opinion. In his speech, Ploß used the phrase that someone was saying something, not only with regard to Schwesig, but also in relation to Federal Chancellor Olaf Scholz. This alone makes it clear that this is a stylistic device to summarize political positions and not a literal reproduction, it said. In addition, there were also sufficient connecting facts for the expression of opinion because Schwesig had advocated a speedy commissioning of the gas pipeline in public statements. After the escalation in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the federal government put the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline on hold on Tuesday. In the event of a future controlled sale of cannabis to adults, addiction experts have warned of consequential damage and have called for preventive measures. Among other things, a quantity limit for sales and warnings are needed. In addition, illegal trade must be consistently prevented and, above all, the protection of minors must be taken into account and expanded. Leading German addiction specialist societies called for this in a joint position paper published by the German Center for Addiction Issues, the DHS. According to the coalition agreement, the traffic light government wants to allow controlled sales of cannabis to adults for recreational purposes in certain licensed shops. The experts called on the legislature to take measures to reduce the health and social consequences that could be expected from an expansion of cannabis use. The catalogue of demands comes from the DHS, the German Society for Addiction Research and Addiction Therapy, and the two German societies for addiction medicine and addiction psychology. They cover the entire spectrum of prevention, research, therapy, and advice, and are confronted with all cannabis-related disorders and consequences of consumption. Against this background, from the point of view of the signatories, a bundle of precautions is necessary. The number of licensed sales outlets should be limited, as should their opening times. They would have to keep a minimum distance to youth leisure facilities and schools. Consumption should be prohibited there, including the sale of alcohol and tobacco. The experts also demand that cannabis should not be allowed to be sold legally from the age of 18, but only from the age of 21. And their rationale is completion of brain maturation, reductions in risk of cannabis-related disorders, the paper states. Violations of the protection of minors would have to be sanctioned with a withdrawal of the sales license. Dangerous preparations should be banned, as should any direct or indirect promotional activity. Packaging should be provided with warnings and telephone number for advice. Parallel to the increase in tax revenue from the sale of cannabis, investments should be made of a comparable magnitude in improved prevention, early detection, early intervention, advice support and treatment, as well as healthcare and therapy research in the field of cannabis-related disorders. The specialist societies also warn it is to be expected that the illegal market will counteract lost sales through increased sales pressure through lower prices and sales to minors. The federal government's new drug commissioner, Burkhard Blinert from the Social Democrats, recently said, "It doesn't make sense to break legalization over the knee now if the sales outlets have to close again a little later because we forget something." In any case, there will be a law during this election period that will make it legal, but controlled and safe for adults to buy cannabis in Germany. The specialist societies called for comprehensive accompanying research. In addition, a group of experts from various disciplines should advise the government on implementation. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.